so that means now the derived class can see it, but no other class can see it, right? So same thing over here, just over here. So only for the private field, oops, I spelled it. Okay, so only for the private field we mark it as protected. The property is already public, so you don't have to do anything. So in the full-time student, so remember this code is in the full-time student, we mark the test 1 and test 2 as protected, right? Now let me go to the grad student. And now you'll see everything is accessible, okay? However, this thing is misaligned, correct? Now if there are no squigglies, no red squigglies, then if you retype the last curly brace, it will realign everything. Okay, so you can see thesis got realigned. However, toString, we still have a problem. So the printing of the first 5 fields, we can delegate to our base class. So we can say base.toString. How many total fields we have in the in the grad student?
1, 2, 3, 6.
So the last field, we can print ourselves. Okay, and now we can say thesis.toString. Right? Okay, so our grad student class is ready. Same way, let's pretend we have a PhD student also. Okay, and the formula for the PhD student is, let's say, 0.3 and 0.7. Okay, and let's say PhD student will also have 2 extra fields, dissertation and a PhD advisor. Okay, so you can add those.
Professor, in this, the thesis field is a string, right?
Correct.
So for this one, do we need to add the toString method?
Oh,
Yeah.
did I say
Or
toString
the
over here?
or-
Oh, you're right. So, I mean, it will still work, but there's no need for it. Okay, good point.
The same one.
Same question? Okay, yeah. So thesis, just thesis. Okay. Okay. So PhD student, I will leave it to you to create and add it over here. Let me go to the part-time student. So if I right-click on name of the project and say add new item, and pick a class, and now let me call this part-time student. Okay, so now for the part-time student, let's pretend we will have first name, last name, ID, sorry, no ID, we'll have a social security number, okay? So, string ssnum, okay, and if I right-click, refactor, encapsulate field. Okay, so anyway, so now what do we need? We still have 5 fields, but the 4 fields are same as a full-time student, okay? The 5th field is different over here. Okay, so at this point you will recognize you're repeating the 4 fields. See, if I keep writing the first name, last name, ID, sorry, not ID, test 1, test 2, right? So let me put a comment over here. First name, last name, test 1, test 2, same as full-time student. So that means we need to change our code, which is, in the technical terminology, we call it refactoring. Okay. So let's create another class where we will have 4 fields instead of the 5 fields. Okay. So now let me go to the full-time student class. Okay.
Professor,
Uh-huh.
I have got one error. When I override the method compute grade
Okay.
in the grad student,
Uh-huh.
it is saying that grad student dot compute grade cannot override the inherited member
Correct.
to full time.
So let's go to the full-time student. Okay, I haven't compiled it, but I'll get the same error if I do that. Okay. Remember, anytime we inherit and we change the code, the base class has to give permission. So, because, so how should we mark this as?
Virtual.
Or abstract? We cannot mark it abstract
Because
as
it has
code.
full.
It has to be marked as virtual. So if you do that, your error will go away. Okay? Okay, so now let me go to the full-time student and copy the inside of the full-time student. Okay, so I'll copy all the code in the inside of the full-time student class. And now I'll create a new class, add class. And let me just call it student, which basically is both a full-time student and a part-time student, possibly, okay? So I'm adding a class called student, and over here I'll paste all the fields, right? So the purpose of this class is to act as the base for a full-time and the part-time student, right? So shall I mark this class abstract?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, and now this constructor will be called student. This constructor will have how many fields? Four, right? Because remember, the base class only has the common things. So there are 4 common things between the full-time and the part-time student, which is F name, L name. There's no ID, so we'll remove the ID. There's test 1, test 2, so let me remove this line for the ID. So for the student class, the 2 constructors look like you see on my screen, right? Make sense? Okay, now let's go to all the fields. We need to remove which field over here?
ID.
ID field. So I'll remove the ID field, delete, highlight and delete. And what about the toString method over here?
ID.
Okay, so over here the ID will go away, correct? Okay, so now that we have created a student, which is the base of the full-time and the part-time, okay, so once again, the student class now has 4 fields: first name, last name, test 1, test 2, no ID. So let's go to the now full-time student. In the full-time student now, where will we inherit from?
Student.
So this will inherit from student. So let's take a look at the second constructor. We'll still have 5 fields, right? However, the work of initialization for the first 4 fields will be done by what? Base, which is a student, right? So what will I pass to it? F name, LNN, test 1 and test 2. Everybody agrees? So what's the field that we have not initialized?
ID.
ID. So we will only leave the line for the ID. Correct? Now, do we need the first name
No.
field? No, it's already coming from student class, right? Do we need last name?
No.
Do we need ID?
Yes.
Yes, we are adding that extra field in the full-time student. Test 1 is not needed, test 2 is not needed. Do we need this compute grade? See, this is, which class is this?
Full-time.
Full-time student, right? Do we have any formula for the full-time student? No, right? Because we don't know whether it will be a grad student, undergrad student. So if we don't write it, what will happen? Will it be inherited from our base class called student?
Yes.
Yes.
Remember, everything is inherited. So if I delete this compute grade method, and let me take you to the student class. In the student class, do we have a compute grade? Is it declared virtual?
Yes.
So once it's inherited by full-time student, it will continue to stay virtual, so that's perfectly okay. So that's why we don't have to write compute grade in the full-time student. Okay, what about toString? The work of initialization of the first 4 fields is done by
Based on
Base.
dot toString, and we can further print the ID at the end. Okay, so if you examine the total code now for the full-time student, you can see it's very tiny, okay? The 2 constructors, correct? So this is full-time student. The 2 constructors, right? Then what else? ID is the additional field, and the toString, which basically again delegates most of the work to the base class called student, right? Now let's go to the part-time student. Okay, where will part-time student inherit from?
Student.
Full-time student or student?
Student.
Student. So we'll automatically get the 4 fields, right? We added the additional field. What do we have to provide? 2 constructors, remember? So public part-time student is 1 constructor, public part-time student, so this will have 4 fields, correct? Or sorry, 5 fields. What will be the next field? Social security number, and then test 1 and test 2. Okay. And now the work of the initialization of the first 4 fields will be done by what?
Base class.
Which is student, correct? So if I pass FNM, LNM, test 1, test 2, it will be initialized over there, and the last field will be initialized by us, correct? So again, take a look how small the code is for the part-time student. We have the 2 constructors. Second constructor delegates the work of initialization of the 4 fields to its base class. We added the 5th field for the social security. And what else do we have to provide now? toString method, correct? And after we delegate the work of printing the first 4 fields to the base class, what do we have to print extra over here?
SS.
So, SS. It's already a string, so we don't have to do it, right? Okay. Now, what if the part-time student had a different formula for grading? Then in that case, what will you do?
Public override.
Public override, and you'll provide the code, right? To save time, I will leave it up to you, so override compute grade, so that 0.35 and 0.65. Okay, so anyway, to save time, you guys can do that, right? So, oops. It's okay. Ready? Wow. Have you done it before?
Yeah.
Okay, so anyway, let's now take a look. So our scenario so far looks like this, right? We have a student class at the top, correct? And from the student class, what did we inherit? Full-time student, and what else? Part-time student. And from the full-time student, what did we inherit?
Graduate and undergraduate students.
UG student, grad student, and as part of the assignment, you will also add a PhD student yourself. Okay. Now, so that covers the student side, right? Now let's go to the faculty and staff side. Okay. So for example, let me add a class. Suppose this is faculty. Oops, misspelled it. Okay, and suppose for the faculty we will have string, first name, last name. Okay, I won't create the public get set, assume you already know how to do that. You will do that as part of your assignment, right? String, rank. Okay, because a faculty has a rank like associate professor, full professor, assistant professor, right? What else will we need? String, department, string, telephone, right? So let's pretend these are the fields. And of course, you will put two constructors and the toString method, correct? Faculty also has address, okay, city, state, okay. So anyway, so whatever is the address of, right? So that will be the faculty. So let me copy this code. And now let's create another class for the employee. So class, let's say, well, let me call it staff. So I'm creating a class for a staff. For example, secretary or lab manager or whatever, right? So of these fields that we had put in the faculty, what else do we need? We probably need, for example, instead of a rank, it might be a job title over here. Correct? Do we still need the address and so on?
Yes.
In fact, for a student also, we need address, city, state as well, right? Okay, so again, we'll write down the two constructors and the toString. But as soon as you write this, you will recognize we are repeating things, right? What fields are being repeated?
First name, last name, address.
So which field is not being repeated?
Job title.
Job title, right? So let's go over here and create a base class for the faculty and staff. So if I go add class, now the base class for faculty and staff, let me call that employee. Okay. And in the employee class, we'll put all those common fields. And we'll take out the field which is not common, which in this case is the rank, right? So now if I go to the, and of course we'll put the two constructors, the toString method, right? So now if I go to the faculty class, where did it go? Okay, where will it inherit from? And so of course we don't need the first two fields. We only need the rank, correct? Okay, now if we go to the staff class, where will it inherit from? Employee, right? So we don't need all these fields. And these are coming from our, right? Okay, so now let's go to the employee class. We have these 6 fields, right? First name, last name, telephone address, and city and state. Okay, let's compare it to student. Does the student need first name,
Yes.
last name? We didn't put it, but a student will also have some address, city, state, and telephone, right? So as soon as we recognize, hey, we are repeating things, so between the employee and the student, we have 6 fields that are common. So what will we do to those 6 fields? Create another base class. So what should we call that base class? Which is the base of a student as well as an employee. We can call it a person, for example. So if we add one more class, let me call this class person. And now over here, we will have all those 6 fields, right? Do we need a department? No. So we'll take out the department. Sorry, these 5 fields will be common to a student as well as employee, correct? So if I go back and now refactor employee, where's the employee inheriting from? Person, right? And then we don't need, we only will have department and address, city, state. Okay, in the person, what did we put in? 6 fields, right? Okay, so anyway, in the employee, we add the department. Then further, as we inherit faculty from the employee, we add the rank. Okay, now let's go to the student class. Where will student inherit from? So this will inherit from person. And of course, now you will have to adjust all the constructors and so on. So I will leave that as your assignment. So your assignment is to complete this university application with all the classes, right? So in the end, how many classes we are left with? I mean, we have created. At the very top is the person, then employee and student. Then from the student, full-time student, part-time student. Then from the full-time student, undergrad, grad, PhD. So you can see in any real application, there will be a hierarchy of these classes being created. Now in the beginning, as I mentioned, you may not have an idea what classes to create, so start from the concrete classes, meaning the classes that represent the real entities in the system, and gradually you will discover, you'll start to create base classes and so on. Okay, last comment, since there are many classes, pretty soon you will lose track of which class or how one class relates to another. So this is where we use UML. One of the purposes of the UML is to very easily describe the hierarchical relationships in a graphical manner so that we can visually see the relationship between classes. So let me show you how easy it is in Visual Studio to create that UML. So all you do is right click on the university app, okay, and add new item, okay. And one of the options over here will be a class diagram, okay? So you select the class diagram and you can give it some meaningful name. For example, university app.cd, okay? So I picked the class diagram that I'm adding. Okay, so then it will give us our designer surface, and all you have to do is just start dragging and dropping the classes. For example, at the very top was the person, so I will drag and drop over here. Okay, then on the left side was the student, which we inherited. So automatically we'll create the relationship, okay, meaning visual relationship. Then on the right side, if you remember, it was the employee. Okay, from employee, okay, from student we had full-time student. Okay, we also had part-time student. So all I'm doing is dragging and dropping, and then, for example, from part-time grad student was inherited from, right? And undergrad student, okay, and very similarly, staff was over here, faculty, let me just put it over here, right? So anyway, so at the very bottom, these are our concrete classes. We'll be creating objects of undergrad student, grad student, faculty, staff, right? Okay. At the top, full-time student, part-time student, student, employee, person, will we be creating objects of the top 5 classes? No. So how should all of these full-time, part-time, student, employee, how should they be marked?
Abstract.
Abstract. Okay, so make sure, okay, so your goal is to enhance this, okay? You can add, for example, a PhD student. You can add some more categories over here related to, for example, a lab manager. For example, you can put some dorm or building classes. So I leave it up to you, however you wanted to enhance it. Okay. Make sure you write proper constructors. Make sure you delegate the work of the toString to the base class properly, right? And so this will be due next week, and on the website I'll put information how you will be submitting. Okay. All right. I'll stop here.